Though the factory shut down almost 30 years ago, and the car's creator has died, at least one man works tirelessly to keep the dream alive. His name is Don, and he's the only DeLorean certified mechanic working in the US today. Here is his shop, DMC, California. But first, some background. When I was a little kid, the DeLorean changed my life. The first time I ever saw one was the second I learned that a car could be more than just a mode of transportation. From the unpainted, Guagaro-styled stainless steel body to the low, wide stance, its starring movie role, and the open doors extending to the sky, everything about the DeLorean seemed right to a 4-year-old kid. I only later learned of the troubles that followed John DeLorean and subsequently the car's performance. A walk through DMC reveals every conceivable part you could need to replace on a DeLorean, from wheels to complete body panels, engines, never used original stock transmissions, and even chassis. Outside sat more DeLorean cars than I've ever seen in one place. I immediately wondered how Don and his staff could identify one from another.
There was one time that I counted all the cars. We've had 40 cars here on the property at one time. I probably got about 20 here today. But we make sure we have a key code up there, and every spot in the shop has a specific location of where every key goes for which car, so we don't get making mistakes. This place exists because John DeLorean had a dream, and he built the car, and went over to Ireland, had them mass produced over there. He went from the beginning to the end. It took 5 years to make the plant, and they had them rolling off there. And this was his dream car. I personally got to meet John, and I told him I'll do whatever I can to keep him on the road.
But I didn't just come here for the tour. I came here to find out the answer to a question I've had for a long time. Can you make a DeLorean fast? One of Don's customers seems to have the answer.
All right, here we go. The world's fastest DeLorean, and it has one of the hardest clutches I've ever used. So, Kenny Duttweiler, twin turbo Buick Grand National V6. Now, I will admit that I have talked to several people about doing a motor swap into a DeLorean because I always loved the styling of it, love the look of the car, love the idea of the car, but everyone knows the stock PRV engine in this thing is a pile of crap. And it's not a pile of crap, it's a bad engine, it just doesn't make any power. Most people know of the PRV engine as the motor that you can find in a Volvo 240, and it makes an amazing 130 horsepower. This car makes 575 horsepower. So let's put our foot in it and see what happens. It makes a cool sound, that's for sure. I mean, it's not blowing me away with the speed right now. It's not. It's definitely faster than the original. When I drove the original DeLorean, I raced a minivan on a racetrack and got positively smoked by the Toyota Sienna minivan.
Well, I tell you what, that's one of the things in the beginning that John DeLorean really wanted. I mean, he put the PRV engine in there with 130 horsepower. Then we start getting into cams and headers and stuff like that. So little by little, we're getting more horsepower out of it. This is pretty scary to drive. I'm serious. Every time I get done, I don't know how you will be, but when I get done driving this, if I get out on it a little few times, I get out of the car shaking because it's like a little sled car. You give it that gas and you better just make sure you know where you're going. You know, I've been doing this for 30 years and all I do is just DeLoreans. As far as the suspension, with this car, I've never had an issue. He takes on the racetrack. I've got people racing in Florida with twin turbos because of the power. They're keeping up with some of the best cars out there. As far as the frames, I mean, it's designed to crush as you get in an accident. So the front is a little on the weak side, but they do have a front recall kit for them that reinforces that. Number one thing with the DeLoreans is just the uniqueness, the style, the sleekness. I mean, you got the wishbone frame, front and rear, fuel tanks in the front, engine in the back. It's all encased. You got the gull-wing doors, stainless steel. I mean, these are things that, I mean, the car's 30 years old. Still looks just as good. You can put it up against any brand new car today. And people probably take more pictures of the DeLorean than they will a brand new car.
You know, now people my age, 30 years old, the late 20s, early 30s, now guys like us who grew up with Back to the Future, who grew up seeing these cars on posters when we were kids, now that we can afford them, now that we can actually afford these cars, I think they're going to be collector's items. And I think if you can find one at a good price today, you do well to buy it, keep it, and hold on to it for a while. But let's try and give it a little more juice and see what happens. Yeah, it was definitely breaking up at the top of the power band there. Don told me this car had been sitting for quite a few months before we took it out today. He said it was a nice excuse to give it some exercise. I think it might need a little bit of tuning work.
Turns out the car had been sitting for about 6 months until I called up and asked to drive it, and old fuel had gummed up the lines. The more I drove, the worse it got.
It's all sticky and gooey.
Would that have been helped with some fuel stabilizer maybe?
Yeah, you need to solidify it, you need to loosen it up, yes.
Banana peels and Miller beer. Yes. This DeLorean that runs on gas, it's bullshit. Without a Mr. Fusion.
Don worked his magic on the downed DMC, trying to clear out the sludge in the fuel lines by flushing them with fresh gas and adjusting a hose so it wouldn't crimp. And for a minute, it worked.
Kind of missed yet.
Feels all right, man.
You can make it to the gas station, put fresh gas in there to help clean it all out.
Let's try that.
Okay.
He straightened out the $100 hose to help it flow better, and now we're gonna fill it up with cold gas, like from the ground, which should circulate the fuel a little better, hopefully make it run a little better.
And the gummy stuff, brand new fuel will help break up the gummy stuff.
And brand new fuel will help break up the gummy stuff. All right. Let's see, come on, baby. 575 horsepower. No, it's not. That's flat right now. It's breaking up quite a bit.
It was done for, and time to call AAA.
I guess the moral of the story is if you have a car with a one-off 20-year-old motor swap in it, you might want to maintain it. You might want to make sure everything's running with the gas, put some fuel stabilizer in it, because otherwise things like this can happen. And when you're driving a very unique engine swapped car, unfortunately things like this frequently do happen, which is why when I buy my DeLorean, I'm going to leave it stock. Maybe put an exhaust, maybe a little bolt-ons here and there, but I don't need all that. I can appreciate the shape. I can appreciate how it feels to sit in it. It makes me feel like a kid. And I still love DeLoreans. And when I do buy one, I'm gonna buy one from Don at DMC Garden Grove. And I'd like to thank them for coming on the show, trying to share a car with me, showing me around their shop. And next week on Tune, we are going to be going to a runway for a tuner car shootout. You're not gonna wanna miss that. Mondays, only on the Drive Network. So until then, I'm Matt Farah, and we'll be waiting for AAA.